What is up, everybody? Welcome into Shout, a Buffalo football podcast, Wednesday, February 18th. And we are just about 4 or 5 days from the NFL scouting combine where the NFL world meets. And we start to really see the pieces coming together in the offseason, right? Like the first look at these prospects up close, for the most part, where they're all in one place. We had the Senior Bowl a couple weeks ago and everything like that. But, business is done in Indianapolis. That's the tagline, right? So the business is about to pick up. And right here on the Shout Buffalo Football podcast, Ryan and I wanted to spend an episode kind of going over setting the table for this offseason. So I wrote a story today. You can read it over at Syracuse.com about the moves that are available to Brandon Beane to open up some cap space. What do we think is a good idea? What do we think maybe isn't as simple as you first think when you look at it? We'll get into all of that, some of the free agents that the Bills have set to hit the market and whether or not a deal makes sense to get done with any of those beforehand. Ryan Talbot, all the way out in Arizona. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great, enjoying my time here in Peoria. It's been beautiful weather. Maybe not sizzling hot. Today's only about 60, but still a lot of sun. Good times with family, so thrilled to be here, though.
So I think the best place to start is where the Bills currently stand from a salary cap perspective. And first and foremost, you're looking at a deficit. NFL.com put out a story earlier this week, and they basically took all of the teams and ranked them by tabulating their cap space and where they ranked in terms of all the other teams in the league, and then draft capital that they have. The Bills ranked 32nd out of 32 NFL teams in terms of what they have at their disposal. So there's work to do from a cap perspective. They're probably going to be somewhere around $12 million or so over the cap. Once that cap number is finalized, it's supposed to be between 301 and 305 million. The Bills have about 321 million in cap commitments on their books for 2026. The first lever is the easy lever, right? It's the one that you pull every single year. Josh Allen, contract restructure, take the base salary, convert it into a signing bonus. Boom, you have $12 million right there, and then you're at least in an operating place with the budget, so you can start to move some other things around.
Yeah, and that's the most obvious move. If the Bills were in a better spot financially, would they like to just kind of keep it as is so that way you're not adding later down the road? Sure. But where they are right now, that gets you cap compliant essentially in one move. It's a move that you feel very comfortable with, knowing Josh Allen, knowing that he's in the prime of his career, that the contract's going to be there long term. You probably are going to re-up him again at some point. So for all those reasons, that lever alone makes the most sense because, like you said, it's $12 million. That's about the deficit that you're facing. So do that, and then you can start pulling some of these other levers.
So let's get into those levers. And I listed the 5 moves that to me made the most sense right off the bat. There wasn't a lot of complication. One maybe has a little bit, and we'll talk about that as a sidebar here in a second, but they were just the easy ones. Like, so you have Spencer Brown, who's sitting there on the salary cap right now. I think his number, let me pull it up here. He just signed in September of 2024 a big contract extension. He is on the books right now for his contract number. This cap hit is $19.3 million. So if you convert everything in Spencer Brown that you can do, is base salary, some of the bonuses and everything like that, you end up opening somewhere around $12 million in cap space. And this is a move that makes sense because he's a guy that you want a part of things. He's going to be 28 this season. So you figure just really getting into the prime of his career. Obviously the back issue a couple years back probably would give you pause at the time, but he's been pretty consistently available, a couple of different odds and ends this past season. But he's somebody that you've relied upon quite a bit. The other 2 moves that are slam dunks to me, and I wanted to get your thoughts on them. Curtis Samuel, release him. You get $5 million in cap space right there. And then safety Taylor Rapp. You release him and you open up about $2 million in cap savings. And the reason you do that is because you have a new defensive coordinator in Jim Leonhard, and you're very likely going to remake that room quite a bit. So I just thought that those were just off the rip here. Those are 4 moves that can just get you compliant and then get you a little bit of play money with free agency on the way.
Yeah, and starting with Spencer Brown, I would argue he's their best offensive lineman. That's no knock on Deion Dawkins, but Dawkins, a lot of holding issues. He's talked about how he's going to remake his body this offseason, come back around 320, and hopefully that is the case, and it's the next phase in his career. But long term, Spencer Brown is your guy. He is someone that you can count on at right tackle, which in these days is just as important as left tackle. So rework that deal, free up the money. And Curtis Samuel, that's a no-brainer. The Bills tried something a few years ago, bringing him in on a 3-year deal worth about $24 million, I believe, at the time. And it just hasn't worked out. He hasn't been able to stay healthy, and that has just kind of deterred his entire Bills career. They're going to remake that wide receiver room completely this offseason. Khalil Shakir is safe. Shavers is going to be coming back from a pretty serious injury, obviously, but you have other guys there too that could come back. But realistically, you're probably going to want to have 2 new receivers that can compete for top spots along with Shakir, whether that's via the draft or free agency, or trade, obviously, which we'll hit upon. So you move on from Curtis Samuel, and then same thing with Taylor Rapp. Rapp had some nice moments, but move on from him. Let Jim Leonard bring in a safety that maybe was in Denver. Locke is a safety that's poised to hit free agency, go in the draft. This is a very deep draft class for the safety position, which, Bills fans, we're not going to get too much in the draft here. But a lot of the Bills' biggest needs are supposedly areas of strength in this year's draft class. So that's one good thing if the Bills do miss out on some of these top free agents, which is kind of to be expected based on their lack of cap space versus other teams.
So the space created by the Brown contract restructure and Josh Allen, those 2 combined will open somewhere around $22.5 million. So now you're looking at, getting 12 and then another 10. So now you're plus 10. You add another 7, and that's 17 with Curtis Samuel and Taylor Rapp moves. And so now you have some bigger decisions to make. And it's funny, I posted this story, and one of the first things was, why didn't you include Dawson Knox in the 5 moves? And my answer is because I think something's going to happen, no doubt about it, with Dawson Knox. And you could have put him in there in a variety of ways. But I think because there's a couple of different outcomes potentially with Dawson Knox, I kind of put him in his own section at the bottom. He is set to have a $17 million cap hit this season for the Bills. That is completely and 100% untenable to go into a season like this with your 5th highest cap hit be a guy that's, just hasn't lived up to the contract that he got a couple of years ago. And I think parts of that aren't his fault. We've talked about it quite a bit over the years on the show, but it's got to look different. And if just a straight up release, Ryan, would open up about $10 million in cap savings. And that could be the one that makes sense, because if you're the Bills and you shake Dawson Knox's hand and say, thank you for everything, we love what you do, you have a good relationship with Josh Allen, go see what your market is out there, and then let's talk on the other side of this thing. Maybe you can do kind of like a handshake deal. Maybe you go up to him and decide, hey, we can rip this contract up and renegotiate it a little bit, bring that cap number way down, push some of this other money into future years. And now it's a much more appetizing deal on the Bills end in terms of what it will cost this year. There's just a lot of different levers, but this is definitely one that Brandon will push. I don't think he'll get traded, but I guess that's something that could also be one of the final options. Something's going to happen with Dawson Knox, though.
Yeah, completely agree. And honestly, I like the first lever that you pulled. Let him go. Tell him, we would love to have you back at this number, whatever that number is. Go check out the market, see what's available. And, there might be another team that's offering more, but is it worth it to go to a team? Let's just pretend it's a team that's in a rebuild. Do you want to go to a rebuild? Do you want to compete for a Super Bowl and make slightly less money? He's already made life-changing money in the NFL. In a podcast with Mitch Morris, he talked about wanting to do what was right for him and his family long term, but he also acknowledged he wants to be in Buffalo. So If I'm the Bills, I probably let him go, free up that $10 million in cap space, but let him know that if the price is right, love to have you back. And we know that you're a fit in this offense. We know that there's question marks about Dalton Kincaid. Can he stay healthy? He would know that he has a role here one way or the other versus a little bit of the unknown when you go to another team and you might sign for big money, but maybe that role isn't what you end up expecting it to be by the end of the season.
One question here is, when do we expect the cuts and restructuring to happen? And this is something that could start to get rolled out and reported in the next couple of days. We've seen it around the league. Patrick Mahomes had a big restructure here. I think that was reported. Teams have started to pull levers and release guys. I mean, the biggest name this week, Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb. There's been some big time names. And as teams are kind of putting together their wish list for free agency and starting to have these, I would imagine, backdoor dealings with agents, because you can't technically start talking yet, but I'm sure some of it happens. It definitely starts happening in Indy next week. You want to make sure that you have the capital to kind of be aggressive and go after things. And that brings us to our next point, Ryan. The Deion Dawkins conversation is one that I started weeks ago on this show with Mike Giannetti, and we ping-ponged around on a potential trade idea for Deion Dawkins and whether or not that might be something that makes sense at some point. It's dominated the social channels, the radio shows. Like, people have an opinion on Deion Dawkins and whether or not a trade should even be considered. I ended up, after weeks of chatting about this, and I've mentioned, I'm not advocating for a Deion Dawkins trade necessarily. It's more bringing up the topic to have the conversation. If a guy going into his age 32 season and probably going to need one more contract extension, whether it's this offseason or next, are you all in on him as your left tackle for the long term? And that's a question only the Bills can answer, right? Like, if you showed me the trade haul and it's one similar to the one that the Houston Texans got for Laramie Tunsil, I'm at least listening to the other end of that telephone call. And so I thought about it. And where I eventually landed here as we go into things, and I wrote about it today in the story, is an extension for Deion Dawkins, because I think there's a couple things at play here. Number one, he is probably one of the more affordable, good left tackles that you can get under contract. That's number one. He took $60 million over 3 seasons on his last extension. What if you come to the table and he's willing to add 2 more years at somewhere around 20 to 25 million per season? I think that's something that you're investing in with the cap going up. And I think that's a good starting place. And that is the lever that opens up the most salary cap space, because if you do an extension, it opens up almost like $12 million.
Right. And of the scenarios, if the Bills didn't have a left guard and center poised to hit free agency, I could have seen a trade being a very realistic possibility. See what's out there, get a haul. You'd still have 4 of your 5 starting linemen. But that's not how it is, because David Edwards is about to hit free agency, Connor McGovern. You can't have your entire left side, in my opinion, going into next season being different. And that's not to say they won't re-sign one of those 2 offensive linemen, but money's going to be tight. They're going to have to make some decisions in, is it worth bringing back, let's just say McGovern, for instance, when maybe Alec Anderson can take that job, or you want to get a good look at Cedric Van Granger. Those are the conversations going on behind closed doors now at One Bills Drive. But one thing that they really shouldn't be talking about is moving Deion Dawkins, because of the potential changes that you're going to see on your O-line in this offseason. They might lose out on both of those 2 players that I mentioned already. You want to have Dawkins as that stabilizing force on the left-hand side. Generally speaking, everyone that's come in to play guard next to him has fared pretty well throughout his entire tenure in Buffalo. An extension to let him kind of play out his career here. He seems like a player that truly wants to be a lifer in Buffalo. So extend him. We know the going rate for good offensive linemen. Obviously not an elite left tackle, but still a very good left tackle in my eyes. And if he does come in good shape this offseason, I'll be intrigued to see if maybe he can still elevate his game despite his age.
Interestingly enough, I went back and was reading through some of Brandon Beane's comments at the end of the season, and he was asked point blank in one of our media availabilities, would you consider at any point moving Deion Dawkins to guard? And he said, listen, that's something that he could do, but it's something that he probably doesn't want to do because, I think it's still tackle money is better than guard money. And, he's good there. Like, I've been critical of Deion, but let's not get it twisted. I think he needs to take less penalties. I think he's got to be more accountable for that. That's a big piece of it. I think that at times you would like him in those premium matchups against some of the elite guys. You're not always going to be able to give consistent and constant chip help like you saw in the Cleveland game. Some games you're going to need to ask him to win one-on-one against a Will Anderson style quality defensive end. And you want that guy to win more. And I think he's shown enough over the years to be able to do that. And I think if they do move forward and if they do land on an extension, a lot of that will be based on what they've seen from him in the past, because this isn't any new territory for Deion Dawkins, right? I mean, he's had times in his career where there's definitely been people questioning his viability as a franchise staple. I mean, people were talking about moving him to guard back when he was a rookie. And that's something that's kind of always percolated until he really turned into the tackle that he's been over the last 4 or 5 seasons. So it's interesting to see how they play this out with Dawkins, because there's a couple of different things they can do.
Yeah, and when it comes to Dawkins, maybe kicking him inside to guard is something that becomes a realistic possibility if they find the left tackle of the future. Tyler Grable, we're not that far removed from him winning the swing tackle job as a rookie. And I know this year he missed some time. But who knows? Maybe he's someone that can continue developing and be that left tackle of the future. Maybe they address it in the draft if they truly go BPA on day 2 of this year's draft or next year's draft, and they end up finding that answer there. And then it makes a lot of sense potentially to kick Dawkins inside to guard. I saw a comment in here that 32 at left tackle isn't the same as like a 32-year-old running back or wide receiver for that matter. And I agree with that. But if you can upgrade somehow in these next few years, whether it's someone internally on this roster or via the draft, then moving him inside maybe strengthens your overall offensive line, knowing how dominant he's been at times as a tackle.
A lot of comments in here about it looking like you're in jail because that is not your typical background.
It's just a nice, and the orange. It's a nice orange Nike color. My wife's favorite color.
I didn't put that together first. I thought it was just like the backdrop, but it does look like you're wearing maybe a jail.
I have a green handcuff on. I don't know. We went to round 1.
Very interesting. Now, what's the weather out there? Is it beautiful?
The first few days were absolutely beautiful. 70s, a good amount of sun. It's a little bit colder today, around 60. It's going to be in the 60s the rest of the week, I believe, but still. That feels pretty good compared to Western New York the last few weeks, although I see it's been a little bit of a heat wave in the 40s the last few days. So very happy for everyone there in Western New York.
It's still cold at night, and that stinks. But the cool thing happening at Tops Friendly Markets right now is you can bring home the cold with freezer savings. Find the coolest way to save this season at Tops. From now through February 28th, every $40 you spend on participating frozen brands like Snickers, the ice cream bar, sponsored by Josh Allen, Smucker's Uncrustables, Drumsticks, Ben & Jerry's ice cream tubs. I just got my wife, she loves half-baked. I got her one of those the other night. Klondike, the original pizza logs, DiGiorno, and so many other brands. Fill your freezer with family favorites and earn big rewards while you shop. All right, the other big money saver or cap space adder would be something in the Ed Oliver department. And he's entering the last year of his contract, and an extension for him, his market value isn't something that scares you. I mean, he's coming off of a couple of seasons without the kind of sack production that would yield a high number. But the question is, Ryan, Ed Oliver, is he a fit to play the interior defensive tackle in a 3-4 scheme under Jim Leonard? And he's a little bit undersized. I think there's questions about that viability of his player build and what they'd maybe ask him to do. And I think there's a number of different thoughts on the idea. This is one of Brandon Beane's early draft picks, but he's also been one of the guys in the big playoff games. When we talked about Sean McDermott being held accountable, for some of these defensive performances. I think Ed Oliver's got to be right in line there with him. Where do you fall on the Ed Oliver idea? Do you not touch it? Do you let him go into a true contract year? Or do you think about extending him because the contract number is going to be something that you can really stomach and that he will fit in to the Jim Leonhard defense?
I'm going with another door. I'm trying to trade him.
I love door number 3, Ryan.
That's right. I'm looking to move Ed Oliver. And listen, I've heard analysts say that he's not a good fit in the system in terms of too small to be on the inside, doesn't have the length to play on the outside. I've heard Joe Marino talk about how he could potentially be a pretty good fit in Jim Leonhard's defense. So how he fits is all over the board, but I don't think he is a true fit in what Jim Leonhard is going to try to do. Now, a player of Ed Oliver's talent, absolutely, you could get something out of him, and maybe he ends up being making some plays in this system, and it looks good at the end of the day. But I'm sitting here looking at Buffalo's cap situation. I'm sitting here looking at the fact that I'd like them to have some more darts in the draft to bring some players that can be on cost-controlled contracts the next few years, looking for players that are potentially better fits in this system that Leonhard is going to run. And I think trying to move Ed Oliver is the best potential option. You're not going to get some kind of massive haul for a defensive tackle, but you are going to get a pretty decent one, in my opinion, for a defensive tackle that is still in his prime, that's going to fit a lot of even man fronts better than what the Bills are potentially going to do. So you see what he can get on the market. If it's something where you feel like you're getting a good enough return, you move him. And then all of a sudden you try to figure out, what can we do with those picks, whether it's in this year's draft, this year's and next year's draft, to really address this defense, get the right guys on the outside, get the right guys on the interior, whether it's depth, because I think Deion Walker can do very well in that role as well. Even on offense, go out and take a few darts on wide receivers on day 2 of the draft. So when I look at Ed Oliver, he is the one player that I have the most question marks about in terms of being a fit in this defense, where I still think you can get a really good haul for him as well. So I'm looking to trade him.
So the first thing that I think about is something that Brandon said about the defense that the Bills were looking for in the pivot from what they were under Sean McDermott, and multiple fronts. And I think putting offenses in a bind with understanding where guys are lining up and maybe not having guys put in a singular box into this is like the only thing that they can do. I think Ed Oliver in a new system with maybe a better situation from a coaching perspective, like that's the one thing I've been banging the drum. Like they didn't do a good enough job developing a lot of these tackles and edges over the years. Like we've seen them hit a wall, whether it be in the playoffs or as players. I mean, they've had 1 10+ sack performer over the last 7 seasons or 8 seasons. That was Leonard Floyd, a veteran player that came in from somewhere else. So I'm okay with either outcome, to your point. And I'm not against a post June 1st trade, which would net you $15 million in cap space. And I know the first reaction to that is always, well, what are you going to do after June 1st? Free agency's over. Everything's over. Minkah Fitzpatrick and Jalen Ramsey were traded for each other in late June last season. Maybe the wide receiver trade involves Ed Oliver in some way, and maybe you get draft capital in 2027. You can't look at this through a lens that is only focused on 2026. I know this is an important year, but you need to continue to accumulate assets beyond this offseason because the 2027 draft is arguably more top heavy. So if you're going to accumulate some picks in 2027 and give you the mobility to go up and maybe get a game changer in that draft, when maybe there isn't one of those in this draft, I'm all for that idea. And if that means trading Ed Oliver, that's a conversation that Brandon Beane has to start having.
Yeah, and I love the post June 1st conversation and argument, because I could argue that his value will be higher post draft because there's going to be some teams that miss out on defensive tackles in an even man front. And By the time they get to, the next guy up, there's a significant drop off in the draft class, for instance. Whereas Ed Oliver could become available. You're giving up some premium picks in the 2027 draft, or maybe you have a player that the Bills covet and they feel like is a really good fit to their offense or defense. So that's a great way of thinking of it because of the cap space that it frees up. It's not all about 2026. You're right. The Bills are thinking long-term here, wanting to win a Super Bowl in the next few seasons, obviously. But if they can get a better deal post-draft and hold on to Ed Oliver, I'm perfectly fine with that.
I really would love everybody to come out in a couple days, actually, a little over a week. We're going to do Wing Nuts at the end of the month, 1402 Millersport Highway, February 28th. So that's actually in, I think, about 10 or 11 days here. That's that last Saturday in February, 6 p.m. at the Millersport location. It'll be our post-combine show. Come on, hang out, have some delicious wings, some beers. We'll talk Bills football. It's going to be a great time. I can't wait to get back together. It feels like it's been too long because our last Wingnut show was early January.
Yeah, when we do an early show one month and a late the next, it does feel like so much time has passed. And it looks like some great specials there. Some hot bourbon maple wings is their special currently. A chicken Alfredo stuffy. So excited to go and try out some new menu items.
You love the stuffies, you and your wife.
My wife
she
loves
the stuffies.
them.
The last one she had was a chicken parm one that I wanted to try, but didn't get it bite. So that might be on the docket for the next live show.
That's right. You can't go wrong. I'm going to go with the wings, but the stuffies are really good.
All right. So before we get out of here and a little bit of a programming note, we're going to have a fun episode on Friday. So come back for that one. We'll be talking about our 6 favorite wide receiver trade ideas for this offseason with the Bills, because I do think there are a couple names in free agency, and we'll hit that as we move closer to the new league year. But I think some of the trades and setting the table for the wide receiver trade specifically, there's a lot of interesting names. We'll have a story that goes up on the website, and then we'll talk about it on the podcast. But let's get into some of the Bills free agents, because they have 21 of them, and I'm very interested to see who they really get down the road with and who they want to bring back. Because I have a hot take that I could see as few as like 3 coming back. And maybe that's like a hot take and too much of a completely reshaping this entire roster kind of approach. Where do you stand? And I think maybe the best exercise here is I'm going to go through these free agents, and I want you to stop me when I get to one where you think the Bills will ultimately re-sign them. Are you ready?
All right. Ready.
Edge rusher, Joey Bosa. Defensive tackle, Daquan Jones. Center, Connor McGovern.
Could see it. Could absolutely see that. I think one of the 2 offensive linemen come back. I know with the Bills cap situation and what both of those players could potentially get in free agency, it's not a guarantee. But McGovern's been so good with Josh Allen, and he's played that role so well. And, this is not a knock on Alec Anderson. It's not fair to him. There's a low snap or two when he came in at one point this season and had to kind of play that role. I know that with given time and things like that, if he's the starter or Cedric Van Granger ends up being the starter, they can work out all the kinks. But there are no kinks to work out with Connor McGovern and Josh Allen. I love his game. I think his cap hit, it's about, I think his projection's about $16 million. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I think the Bills can figure out a way to make that work, and I think that's good value for McGovern based on what we've seen from him in Buffalo.
I'm at the place now where I think McGovern is the most likely of the free agents to be re-signed. And I mean that by like the bigger name guys. Like I think Reggie Gilliam's most likely going to be re-signed. I think Mitchell Trubisky, those kinds of guys. But if you had to tell me like the big ticket items, I think that's the most easy to fit into your future cap needs. Like the center position, even though McGovern's going to get probably top dollar, you can fit that into your cap a lot easier than maybe the 20+ million per season that David Edwards is going to get. And I think you can do a lot more with some young guys around McGovern. He's been super consistent. He's played hurt. He's super tough. And I think you could structure a deal that puts it super like top heavy early in the contract and give yourself some flexibility later on as you continue to develop Cedric Van Pran Granger. And maybe you even think about shooting Van Pran Granger out to left guard. That might be something that could be in the mix too. If they don't sign either of them, though, let's talk about that outcome, because I think that's just as likely. There's a couple of things that are going to happen. Number one, I think Van Pran Granger and Alec Anderson are given chances to start, but they're going to bring in competition, whether it be free agency or the draft. What do you think ends up being the ultimate answer there? Do you think it's a free agent replacement that's more at a, $5-6 million per season number at either of those spots? Or do you think it's like a Osiris Torrance situation where they're looking at maybe a first-year rookie starting every game? I mean, Torrance has started every game since he's been drafted for the Bills.
Yeah, so in this scenario, I can't go with one of the Bills currently on the roster. It's either going to be a veteran.
No, you can.
Okay.
You can.
I would stick with someone that's already on this roster. I think it's a good chance that Alec Anderson and Cedric Van Pran Granger battle out for that job. And you're right, though. Brandon Beane has always, even when the Bills have had a lot of depth on their line in previous years, he's always gone out and added a few in free agency, and I have no doubt he's going to do that this year as well, with some guys that will be near the veteran minimum or a little bit above that. But I look at this and I say, okay, Alec Anderson, the only thing that could really hurt him is his versatility, his ability to play across the line, and you might want that to be the first guy off the bench. But at the same time, he's been waiting in the wings for an opportunity. He's shown he's capable when he's been in the lineup of holding his own, regardless of where they've played him. Van Pran Granger was a mid-round pick a few years ago that was dominant at Georgia. He's had some injury, misfortune, and then he's obviously had some talented players in front of him. So I do think that they have guys in this room. But if the Bills were to make one, big move in free agency, I think it's just retaining one of their own. They're going to do a lot of shopping at Aldi and Ollie's and Trader Joe's in free agency in terms of the guys that they're bringing in, but they're going to get a few brand name guys as well, at least one. And I think it could be Connor McGovern.
Trader Joe's is not like bargain shopping, Ryan.
I've only been there once or twice. Sorry.
Yeah, Trader Joe's is not in the Aldi.
It's of the Aldi family.
No, it's not. It is more in the Whole Foods family than it is the Aldi family, dude.
I think they're owned by the same, they're the
same. It might
owners.
be, but Trader Joe's is expensive, bro. Have you ever been in there?
That's my bad. I've been there once or twice. It's fine.
All right. I'll let you off the hook there. You didn't know. I get it. I actually don't shop a ton there. I've been to Whole Foods a couple times on the road. I do enjoy Whole Foods, but do not shop there very regular in Buffalo. Although there's a big one over on Sheridan Drive. But I digress. All right, let's keep going through these free agents because there's a couple that I do think could be in the mix. I don't think any of these next 5 will be re-signed. And let me get your thoughts on that. Larry Ogunjobi, defensive tackle, linebacker Matt Milano, edge rusher AJ Epinesa, guard David Edwards, or cornerback Tre'Davious White.
There's a coin flip for one or two of those guys for me. Trey White has been so good in his tenure with Buffalo this year. He really answered a lot of questions about whether he can still play. But obviously this is going to be Jim Leonard's defense, and maybe that's not what he's looking for. Maybe he just really wants to start Max Hairston and let him develop, which makes perfect sense. But the Bills are hurting for cornerback depth and competition. So of those, I could see Trey White coming back for sure. Larry Ogunjobi was a horrible mistake. No chance there. Who are the others again of that 5?
Epinesa, Milano, and
Epinesa. I could see Milano. It's just the injuries. They need linebackers. He's been so good for so long, but I think they need to turn the page on Matt Milano. Bring in some guys that Jim Leonard has maybe coached at Wisconsin or worked with in Denver to kind of fill out this roster. So of the 5, Trey White's the one that I could potentially see. But at the same time, after the season he had, he might be out there looking for a spot where he can truly start without a competition.
That's the thing. Like, to me, it's more about fit
Right.
like personnel wise than it is like potential fit in the defense. Like I think that they could find a role for him and it might be a little bit different. And they ask, cornerbacks in a Jim Leonard style defense to do a lot different things than they do.
Sure.
I mean, I think it's going to be why I think Christian Benford rises to the top because he's shown characteristics that fit. I mean, he's traveled with opposing teams, wide receivers. He's somebody that can play and really excel in man coverage. And they played a lot of man coverage in Denver the last couple of years. Now Jim Leonard's also said you got to call the plays based on the personnel that you have. I just wonder if with Tre'Davious White, no connections to the coaching staff, although Joe Dana is coming back, which I thought was interesting. Maybe that's a connection, but Bobby Babich is now in Green Bay. Maybe that makes sense for him to kind of follow him and play a more suitable role. And I also think if you're Trey White, you were dealing with all of this confidence issues for years as you dealt and fought through all these injuries. Then you come out and you play the kind of season that you did. I think you probably want to start. And he's not a starter on this team. If he comes back next season, it's got to be Maxwell Harrison and Christian Benford.
Right. Yeah. If he's looking for a starting job and that at the end of the day is his number one priority, I don't see him coming back. And you raised some good points about the fit in this system. I was looking at it from the lack of depth at the position, his success overall, obviously in Buffalo, his love for Buffalo. But if he's looking for a starting job and obviously a job where his skill set, playing zone, stuff like that, then I could definitely see him being out as well and playing elsewhere in 2026.
All right. For the interest of time, I'm going to pop through here and mention the three guys that I do think the Bills will prioritize and re-sign. Reggie Gilliam at fullback. And listen, he might have a market out there, but there's few teams that are able to run the ball to the level that the Bills are, which means he's utilized on offense the way that he is. He has a familiarity with Rob Boris and Kelly Skipper and Joe Brady and Josh Allen. And I think that plays into things. And I also just think fullback market, I mean, there's just a limit to it. And I think the Bills are probably going to be able to spend there. Sam Franklin was really good on special teams. I'd very much consider bringing him back. Although Chris Tabor going to Miami, he's a Tabor guy. Does he follow him there? Does he want to come back? And then another special teamer, Mitch Wisnowski. I thought he was really good as a punter last year. I'd bring him back. And then also, I think the Bills find a way to bring back Mitchell Trubisky.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I agree with the first three that you mentioned in terms of being fits to be re-signed. Reggie Gilliam, too, is probably like the number one. I could see him being re-signed before free agency begins in the near future. I just think that the Bills love him. He loves Buffalo. He's utilized here. He knows his role. He's going to really fit in terms of what Joe Brady does with running the ball and the blocking scheme. He's so good at it. He's even like a low-key fan favorite here. You have the Fullbacks Matter on social media talking about him. I've seen signs in the crowd for Reggie Gilliam. So, obviously dollars and cents matter most to players in their careers, but he is beloved here. And knowing Buffalo's need for a fullback, I think they would give him a very competitive offer. Sam Franklin was outstanding on special teams, but the Tabor point needs to be considered. I could see him going to Miami and helping with the unit there. Wisnowski was excellent. And with punters, you don't want to go in blind and try to draft one late, not knowing if they're going to go late in day 3 before you get the opportunity. So at least bring him back to compete for the job. But I thought he was excellent there in that role too. So those guys make a lot of sense. I would push back on Mitch Trubisky. I know he knows the system, or he's done well. He played excellent against the Jets. I'm ready to move on from the paying a decent amount of money for a backup. Josh Allen is the most durable quarterback in this league, and I don't care how good the backup is. If something were to happen to Josh Allen where he's out for games, I don't know if the team recovers from that. So go in, and if Bouchel was recently added to the 90-man roster. If you draft someone, try to develop a quarterback finally on day 3 of this draft that you can bring in. Because like I said, If Josh Allen goes down, there's no one saving this team. There's no quarterback who means more to their offense and team than Josh Allen. So no knock on Trubisky, like what he's done here in Buffalo, but what it would potentially cost for a high-level backup, I'm not ready to part with that kind of money based on where the Bills are cap-wise.
2 for $5 was his last deal. If it's somewhere in that neighborhood, you're out on that?
Gaudy, but
you're out on that number?
2 for $5, if it happens at that number, I'm not completely against it. I'm just ready to kind of move on and develop a young player that's on a very team-friendly rookie deal for the next few years.
Let me bring up a blast from the past, and his name was Jake Fromm.
Yep.
And that idea was terrible. And because
Fromm made no sense, though. He
didn't make sense, but I also think that
the
regime has demonstrated an inability to scout that position.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that Team USA just scored in overtime, I think, to win against Sweden.
Real quick on Jake Fromm, you're right. That was a draft pick that the Bills made, but he was the anti-Josh Allen. Like, everything that you loved about Josh Allen, Fromm was the exact opposite. Didn't have the big arm, maybe anticipated a little bit better, didn't have the athleticism. It was a baffling pick at the time. I guess it was just where the Bills truly had him as the highest value on their board. But no, I mean, I want them to get someone that has some athleticism to their game, someone that maybe has an arm that obviously not to the level of Josh Allen. Few quarterbacks have that, but has a bigger arm, someone that fits the traits a little bit more. But yeah, Fromm was just a disaster pick. I never understood it. I never thought it was a good fit. And obviously his tenure here was short, but his tenure in the league was even shorter.
So who's the guy that if you look at and I don't know if you've dove into the day 3 quarterback.
I have not.
Okay. Because my big pushback here is with a guy like Trubisky, it gives you a level of security in those one-off situations where, you know, you're in a tight game and you got to throw a quarterback into a game. And I know that Josh Allen has been durable, but he's getting older and he's playing through all of these different elements year in and year out. He played on a broken foot basically down the stretch. And I get it. He doesn't miss time. But if he does miss a snap or a series or a quarter, are you more comfortable throwing out Joe Milton? And maybe you are, or Mitch Trubisky, who knows the offense, is a veteran quarterback. And where do you fall on that?
Well, of that scenario, Trubisky knows the system, so I'd probably pick him over almost anyone. Milton's arm, though, athleticism for the right, I don't even know what is he a free agent, Milton?
No, I just use him as
he was traded
example of somebody that probably fits the Josh Allen mold that came in as a rookie, can run, got a big arm, that kind of thing.
So I guess I would roll the dice on a quarterback similar to Milton in that scenario. I know you're talking only about a few snaps or a few series or even a 1 or 2 games where a veteran would be a better option. But I'm sitting here thinking, okay, he's extended that game streak to whatever it is now, the most in the league. And in a season where the Bills need to pinch pennies, I'm not going out there trying to spend a couple million even on a veteran quarterback.
All right. Well, there you have it. Mr. Talbot wants to run Mitch Trubisky right out of town and bring in a young whippersnapper to back up QB17. All right. Interesting stuff. Fun conversation. I like a little back and forth every now and then, Mr. Talbot. Enjoy the rest of the trip in Arizona. We'll see you back in a couple days. We'll do a podcast on Friday, and I will give you the final thought.
Yeah, final thought, stick with us. Obviously, the combine is right around the corner. We'll have you covered with prospects that the Bills have met with, good fits, who's winning the combine in terms of raising their draft stock and potential fits for the Bills. So plenty to talk about on Shout, a Buffalo football podcast.
Enjoy the rest of your week, everyone. Take care.